And because I did not hit record when I started talking, I'm going to state again that this is the Wrangling User Data to Understand ETAS and HathiTrust Success Community Week session. And I'm Jessica Rohr, Member Engagement Communication Specialist. So now that we've taken care of that piece, I want to remind everyone that HathiTrust events adhere to our member meeting and community week code of conduct, which can be found on our website, on the slide on the screen, and will be pasted to the chat shortly. So this session is being recorded and closed captioning is available if you need it. There is a button at the bottom of your Zoom window that says live transcript. A link to the slides will be available in chat, and Melissa Stewart will be providing technical support for this session. So if you are having any troubles, just direct message her and she can assist you. So be sure to keep your cameras off and your microphones muted for today's presentation, except during the discussion section, which I will talk about in just a second. So the discussion section will use the raise hand feature, which you can access through the participant panel. It's a little blue raise hand icon. And when you want to join the discussion, you can raise your hand and one of the presenters will unmute you so that you can speak. If you don't want to speak, you can still join the discussion. Please use the chat feature to do so, and we will make sure that everyone gets a chance to contribute. So we plan to post this session on our YouTube channel, and we will send links to the recording and the slides after the session, as well as a link to a survey. And we encourage you to complete that so that we can do better and understand more what people would like to have out of these sessions in the future. So we'll go through a couple more the slides here just so you have a chance to read if you need some additional support for using the speaker view, the gallery view. Next slide. There's your mute and unmute button. And then of course the chat. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Kathryn Stein.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathryn Stein, Senior Product Manager for Digitization and Digital Content at the California Digital Library. And I'm very excited to talk to you all today. I'm joined by my colleagues Renata Ewing, also from the California Digital Library, and Chan Lee, who's Assessment Librarian at UC Berkeley. Our plan for today is we're doing a little bit of a hybrid session here where we're going to be looking at why we are assessing, analyzing user data, specifically about HathiTrust ETAS in this moment and how we're going about doing that. So I'm going to kind of set the stage, provide a little bit of context for the framing that we're using to enter into this analysis. And then I'm going to turn it over to Renata and Chan to talk more specifically about the hows. So how we're looking at UC system-wide usage of HathiTrust during ETAS. And then also how we're looking specifically at campus usage at UC Berkeley in this case. So it does bear noting that the California Digital Library, we are involved in promoting engagement with HathiTrust across the UC system. And we do that in a number of ways, but one of the things that we've been doing since we launched ETAS in April is convening a group of liaisons from each of the campuses. And we meet bi-weekly to go over implementation questions and consider how the service is working out for our users. And so we do owe some gratitude to, a fair amount of gratitude to our colleagues on that group for helping to inform this session. So while we're speaking and sharing, that's going to be the first portion of our session. Please do add your questions into the chat, and we'll spend a few minutes regrouping on questions that come up during the presentation portion of our session. And then we're going to switch gears and launch into a discussion with you all. So, we have a fair amount of attendees, and we'll just see how that goes. But during that discussion session, we have some prompts for you all, and we'll encourage you to raise your hand so that we can call on you and you can participate live, just by voice, or you can be adding your questions into the chat, and we'll be tending to questions in the chat as well. So why are we looking at ETAS usage data and HathiTrust usage data more generally? This is a key guiding question since ETAS was launched, both for the work that we're doing at UC and for the discussion portion of this session today. We're looking forward to initiating community conversations about our respective strategies to address this question and to paving the way for continued shop talk about usage data. So we have an operating value proposition that we're using to analyze use data. We're asserting that HathiTrust is a key discovery, access, and analysis environment for UC researchers, faculty, and students who want to work with digitized print collections from UC and beyond as part of their research, teaching, and learning. This is admittedly aspirational, but this is the operating value proposition we're using to inform our analysis. So ideally, we'd be able to interpret and apply usage and other assessment data to help us validate such a value proposition, which is one of our goals. Prior to ETAS, we had dipped our toes into the use analysis pool by consulting the HathiTrust Google Analytics data. And with ETAS here, we are perhaps wading into the shallow end of the pool with more clearly articulated questions to address and decisions to support. So we are aiming to support our UC libraries in making decisions regarding ETAS by providing reports that surface the value of ETAS to our UC community. Now, thanks to HathiTrust providing continually and consistently updated log data and corresponding interpretive guidance for these new data sets, as well as for the HathiTrust Google Analytics instance, we are equipped to look to specific data points to help us address questions that inform our validation of the value proposition of ETAS and its impact. It's been very helpful to have this data available, and we look forward to new developments in how this data can be shared with members and enhanced with additional data points, both from HathiTrust and from our local environments and systems. So I'm now going to hand it over to Renata Ewing to walk us through a few of the data stories that we have seen emerging.
Good morning. This visualization helps us answer the question, to what degree is the UC community using HathiTrust ETAS content? It shows combined ETAS use by day for all 10 University of California campuses. The visualization allows us to easily see the overall trend in ETAS use by UC users. The good news is, with the exception of a lull in the month of June, the overall trend has been towards more ETAS use. The top blue line and dots represent the number of unique users per day who logged into HathiTrust via their UC credentials and checked out at least one ETAS volume. The green bars represent the number of volumes per day checked out by UC users, and the pink line and dots represent the number of renewals by UC users per day. Note that the constant dips or valleys in the data represent weekends and holidays. Our April data is incomplete because each campus joined ETAS on a different day that month. But on average in May, UC had just under 400 unique users per day. That number has doubled to an average of just under 800 unique users per day in the first part of October. While the average number of unique users per day has doubled since May, the average number of checked out volumes and renewals have not. There tend to be more unique users per day than volumes checked out. This suggests that users often check out the same volumes. Next slide. This visualization helps us answer the question, what ETAS content is the UC community accessing? The visualization shows unique ETAS titles accessed by UC users. It provides a total count of titles, 49,013 that have been accessed since launching ETAS in early April on the lower left-hand corner, circled in red. Before creating this visualization, we clustered the data from the HathiTrust Log Data items report via the OCLC number, and then tallied the total checkouts and total renewals. Clustered this way, serials and monographic series are more likely to rise to the top of the list. 3 of the top 6 titles on the list are foreign language journals, including number 2, a Russian serial whose title translates as Friendship of Peoples, number 4, an Egyptian journal, and number 6, a Japanese horticulture journal. It's interesting for us to note that the UC list of top ETAS titles are completely different from the top 12 overall ETAS titles presented at the members meeting last week. When we dig into the actual data for this visualization, we can see that there is a long tail of titles accessed much less frequently. Only 27% of the titles were checked out more than once, and only 1.4% of the titles were checked out 10 or more times. This is a new visualization for us, hot off our presses. We're just starting to think about what we can understand from this type of content analysis. Future investigations might include analyzing the topics or domains represented by the titles in the list. We think our campuses might be able to use it to match against course reading lists to see if ETAS is supporting teaching and learning requests for their students. Next slide. When ETAS started back in April, we began to seriously explore and track what usage data we could via Google Analytics. In early June, HathiTrust provided extremely helpful guidance for creating useful Google Analytics reports. And we were excited when we began to receive HathiTrust weekly log data reports for ETAS in late May. In our explorations of existing usage data, we have encountered numerous challenges. Some of these challenges are comprehensive, such as how to present and explain existing usage data to support analysis and decision-making, and identifying and addressing the data we would like to have to better evaluate our value proposition, but that we don't yet have in hand. Ultimately, we would like to understand how we can fit what we learn about ETAS usage into the larger context of collection access services offered by UC libraries, services offered both during and before the pandemic. We've also had some more specific, but nevertheless serious challenges. These include, how do we understand or explain the HathiTrust log data metric unique users per day in larger granularity, such as per month or overall? Another challenge we're facing is how to manage sampling issues in Google Analytics in order to get more accurate data about UC use. In general, the more narrow or specific your query of Google Analytics, such as the titles of volumes viewed by UC users, the less accurate the resulting data becomes. And the longer the time period for a specific query, the less accurate the results might be. I wish I could say that we have met these challenges, but we are still grappling with them. We are hoping to get some ideas to help inform these and other challenges during our session today. So Chan, go ahead, Kathryn.
Now I'll hand it over to Chan Lee to talk about what's happening at the campus level.
Thank you, Kathryn and Renata. So I will start from talking about a couple of primary goals that we wanted to achieve when we start doing an analysis. The first goal that we have is about user impact. We want to measure, we want to capture that by identifying and understanding the usage of the service, the purpose of the use, and how our users perceive the service as well. The second goal is to understand more about the collections, the digitized collections that are being used in relation to the digitization operation and services. By looking at things such as, what titles are being used, the year of publications, the languages, the subject, so that those data can inform the future digitization service demand and also directions we wanted to go. And then the third goal is to understand and demonstrate the value to the library's mission. One of the strategic goals that Berkeley Library has is about access. The library must help our users find and use scholarly resources in and beyond our local collections. I mean, it's very clear that HathiTrust, the ETAS collection is meeting that goal, but we still need to establish the evidence that demonstrate how this services and to what extent this contributes to the mission. Next slide. So thanks to HathiTrust analytics tools that we're able to see a lot of data. And Renata just demonstrates some of the analysis that she did from the user log files that stored in Box. So I will focus a little bit more on the Google Analytics tool. So if you are familiar with the tool, you understand the kind of metrics that Google Analytics provide, such as the traffic information like page views, the sessions, the users, the bounce rate, the time spent on each site, the referral channels, the website browsing flows, and others. So I will show two visualizations, which I find interesting. This one is the page view by month between this year and last year, 2019. So this year, since April, the total page view generated from Berkeley logins so far until September are 1.6 million page views, which is 17 times of the traffic of last year. So it shows a tremendous increase. And amazingly, we continue to see the increase month after month, especially September page views. It has increased 45% compared to August. I didn't show the October data here because we're still in the middle of it, but I can see from the data that we have so far, it already shows very close to what we have seen in September as well. Now, we still have one more week to go. So the data definitely shows the great value of ETAS service to our users, although we do need other data points to provide more context to this bigger pictures. Next slide. Thank you. So another interesting analysis that we're able to do with Google Analytics is to look at the usage by different access type. The file, the box file that you probably have seen that it shows the usage for ETAS only. But Google Analytics, actually, you can see all of the traffic for all different kinds of types of access. So temporary access, that's equals to ETAS. The full view, those are the books are either in a public domain or books that rights holders have given HathiTrust permissions to make available. And limited views, those are in copyright and our institution don't have the print. So those are the books that only searching is available. So from Google Analytics, we're able to see the traffic by all those three different type of access. So on the left, you could see that the left chart shows the metrics, the page views. So you can see that 87% of the page views, they come from ETAS, which makes sense because for limited view, people cannot access the book, so it doesn't generate a lot of page views. But on the right chart, it shows the unique title count by those three access type. So the results shows, the bottom bar and the top bar shows that the number of books accessed through limited view is indeed very close to the numbers of books accessed through ETAS. So this information could potentially help the library to identify the user demand, whether we want to license those or do we want to digitize those, because those are the content that our users wanted to have access, but they are not able to right now. Next slide. The challenges. So we do have some challenges, but I would also like to think about those as potential opportunities. The first thing is we always need to identify what questions we want to ask instead of what questions that we can ask from analytics. Sometimes we cannot let the analytics limit our thinking. We need to frame and create the data based on our thinking. So there's sometimes it's easy to fall to just look at what is available rather than what we really wanted to ask. So that's something that we always have to remind ourselves. And there are also some limitations in terms of, not limitation, I think there are challenges when you look at the tool and data, because now we have two analytics tools. One is Google Analytics, the other is the user log files. So it's natural to try to think about how to reconcile between the data. What is the user count? How does that mean? What is the checkout? How does checkout compare to the page view? What does it really mean, especially when we see the numbers sometimes are different and the top used content are different. So, how to understand that. And the other thing is about understanding our users. That's something that is still missing from our current analysis, is to understand more about who are using the service rather than just knowing the number of users that we have. We wanted to, I have some previous presentation I've seen from yesterday showing the collection analysis, which can indicate somehow about who are using it or who might be using it. But I think that's some directions we wanted to go to be able to understand more about users. And a cost benefit analysis. I mean, it's very clear to see this service provided tremendous value to the library, to our users. But when you add the cost into the equation, I think it becomes a little bit complicated, because we do invest a lot of resources into all of the activities, digitization activities, but how to justify the investment is a question we wanted to ask. ETAS model is set up to imitate the print circulation model. So I think comparing the usage that we're seeing here and also with the print circulations before the campus closure, I think it will be another interesting analysis. And finally, doing more about qualitative assessment, the feedback from our users, directly from our users on discovery, on the usability, the value, and the future demand. I think it will be something we would like to pursue.
Thank you, Chan. So, and thank you, Renata. We're going to take a moment now to address questions that came up while we were speaking, and we'll do that for a few minutes, and then we're going to pivot and turn the tables a little bit and try to elicit some discussion with you all about approaches that you might have been taking to grapple with the same kinds of questions in looking at user data. So I see that there are some questions that have come in through the chat. And for this portion, that might be the best way to pose questions, is just to get them into the chat, and then we'll address them as they come in. Initially, I see that Miranda Bennett had asked about the total number of users in the UC system. And thanks very much to Corey Craig, who grabbed a data point in response to that question before we could get to it, about the total number of students across the system. And I will note that the number of potential users is quite vast for UC. And that's one of the things that we're going to be thinking about and have been thinking about, and want to learn from you all as well, as thinking about this notion of a denominator of the potential users who is using HathiTrust ETAS content at this moment. And there are a number of different ways to be thinking about that. So that is definitely one of them. There's another question here about, has UC, from Jeff Kosikoff, has UC been able to tease out the total number of unique users across the span of ETAS or within individual days? I'm going to hand that one over to Renata and Chan, because I know that's been something that we've been grappling with.
So we have from the HathiTrust Log Data, we have unique users per day. But if you add those up, you don't have the unique users per that entire time period. In Google Analytics, you can do a query of the entire time period, specifically for logged in UC users, but the results are highly sampled. So I would say that CDL has not yet teased out the total number of unique users across the span of ETAS. I think Berkeley has done maybe some work for their specific campus, but I'm not sure.
It's a very challenging question to answer, I think, because from the log files, it calculates the unique user per day, right? So without knowing the ID, you can really, it's really hard to dedupe that. There's no way to dedupe that based on the data that we have right now. Google Analytics, the Google tool is like, a lot of things are not transparent. So it's really, they don't have a documentation listing how to get unique counts or how they really count the users. So what you could do with Google Analytics is you set up a time period, and then you find out, it can show you the number of users. And what I found is that it's they must have deduped something, because if you add up in each day, if you set a smaller chunk and then you get a user count by each day, if you add them up, the number is usually larger if you set up a larger time frame. So I think that behind the tool, Google Analytics must have deduped some of the users. So I have researched the questions online. Some people saying that they kept your history, or they capture the user credentials for over a month, or about within a month. So if the same user keep coming back using the same browser, you will be registered as one user. So that's why when those data can be filtered out, can be deduped when you do a larger time frame search. So those things, we have to work with. So whatever the data that we have, we just have to think about as not exact number of users, that's probably approximate or something.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. So we always have to be clear about the limitations of the data sets that we have in hand, and be cautious in comparing them. One thing to add there as well is we have done a little bit of experimenting around averaging unique daily users like on a monthly basis, just for the purposes of trying to figure out trends and looking at trends in a slightly different way. But that would be a really great data point to aspire to getting, is figuring that out more definitively from the log data, which we trust a bit more so than the analytics data, which we know has some sampling issues and is, admittedly a bit black boxy, as Chan was saying. Let's see. We've got another question that came in about, could you give a little more detail about the Google Bounce turnaways for Hathi? What is that measuring? And again, I'm going to defer that one to my colleagues. That's not something we included in the presentations today, but I know something that we've been seeing.
So, okay, my understanding of the bounce rate in Google Analytics, it's like it's measuring how often a user goes to your page and then immediately goes somewhere else. So it's like the one analytic you want to be low. And that's my understanding of what that means. And I don't know if Chan has anything to add.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's also the my understanding as well, is you do want to see that number to be low. And for HathiTrust, I think that number is pretty low. It's for Berkeley, I think it's around like 6 to 7% in terms of bounce rate, which means when people they stay on the page because they're viewing the collection, which makes sense as well. They're seeing the content. They're not clicking around to the other side.
So there are a couple more that have come in. Let's see, another question from Miranda about the pattern of increasing unique users. Do you think the pattern of increasing unique users and the steady unique items is related to the project to digitize course materials? That is, more students are accessing the same titles. I would want to test that hypothesis. That sounds like something that could reasonably be happening and is not something that we've looked at in specific as yet. A little plug that we're going to have another session tomorrow thinking about expediting local digitization workflows directly in support of course material requests, which is an activity that's happening at Chan's campus, UC Berkeley. So we do have some really specific data points that we can be looking at where we actually know individual titles that are being included in course reading lists and course reserves. So that would be an excellent hypothesis to test out. I don't know if Renata or Chan, you have any more insight into this.
Miranda, I think this is a great question. That's something that we definitely wanted to do because now we do have the data available. We're able to see what are being digitized for course materials and then what are the usage. So we definitely wanted to see whether that contributes to the increase of the usage or not.
Hi.
I'm sorry. I know someone also asked what is the definition of renewals. And so I just wanted to quickly say, so that's when a logged in user has checked out a book and they're reading the book and their time is running out because there's a 60-minute time limit. So it's when they click that renewal button to renew the book. And so that's counted as a renewal.
Thanks for scooping that one up. Let's see. A follow-up question. Thinking about the bounce rate or turnaways from HathiTrust. So not measuring the multiple people trying to view the same book under ETAS. I think that's right, yeah. All right, that's all the questions that have come in through chat so far. So feel free, to continue to participate in what we hope will be a lively discussion around different approaches that you all might have been taking and that we've been taking in looking at this data. I'm going to pivot now to our discussion prompts, and we've got 3 of those. Where we're really hoping to, as I said at the top of the session, to initiate some community conversation. And we're really hopeful that, we have a good discussion this morning, but that we also continue to address these topics together and kind of set the stage for continued shop talk about use analysis, especially now that HathiTrust has, generously started providing, more of these data points for us to be working through, which is fantastic. So this is a pretty general question, but we're just going to pose it to you all. What questions can or does ETAS usage data help your library or campus address? And please feel free to add a response into the chat. We'll read those out. And or you can raise your hand and we'll see how this goes because we do have a lot of people on the call today, which is great. I'm not seeing a lot of raised hands. Do feel free to jump in on the chat. And as folks are sitting with this question, thinking about this question, oh, we do have one. Okay. So Lisa Schiff, who's our colleague at CDL, I'm gonna lower your hand and unmute you. There you go, you should be.
Oh, okay. I just saw that something actually came into the chat. I was just going to say that another way of thinking about this is just setting aside the usage data that people have. What are the questions that people want to answer and don't know if there are data around to answer, if that helps people think of questions. But I saw one came in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And we do have a question in the chat. I have a question about what tool you use to create box-based reports. So I might ask you to refine a little bit what you mean by the box-based reports. We have referred to box in the presentation simply because that's the delivery mechanism that HathiTrust has been using to share out on a weekly basis the ETAS log reports. So this is the log data that they're capturing specific to your authenticated users' activities when they are logging into to access ETAS titles. Is that what you were referring to? Or is there more information we can share? All right, I'm hoping that addressed your question. What tool to aggregate and display nice charts? Oh yeah, so we have a resources slide at the very end of the presentation, but I will let Renata and Chan speak to the tools that they've been using.
So we've been using Google's Data Studio, which is a free tool, and it's really easy to connect it with Google Analytics. For the box reports, they have to be imported each week into Data Studio, but it's not an easy thing to do.
So we are using Tableau to visualize it. So the Tableau, you can set up the live links connections between Tableau and Google Analytics. So we don't need to manually update it. The data is, once we set up analysis with Google Analytics, is already automatically updated. And then the other, for the box file, we also connect to Tableau, but that we need a manual process to download the file into a central like spreadsheet and then upload it again.
Thanks, guys. So I'm going back into the chat to try to scoop up any other questions that have come up or comments. Let's see. Do we get turnaway data from HathiTrust, items our users tried to access but could not? No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think that's being tracked. I think that's yeah.
That's something I do want to ask HathiTrust if they have that data available.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, that would be really helpful. And I think to a certain degree really aligns with the second visualization that Chan was showing, where there's this really fascinating space for us to interrogate between what folks are getting at through ETAS and the limited view content that they're trying to get to, but that has not been included in our overlap with HathiTrust. Another one here, it would be interesting to find the usage of digital versions of print material owned by our campus, since our print collection is currently not accessible. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the key things that we're really, really interested in with ETAS being deployed and implemented and used across our system. And I'm sure this resonates with folks out there as well, is really thinking through the question of suitability for different kinds of research, different kinds of teaching and learning activities of the print versus the digital. That's definitely something that we're wanting to get a better handle on. One of those comparison points that might help us with the denominator question. Okay, apologies, I haven't been reading out the names of folks who are asking the questions, but I'll make an effort to keep doing that. So Carla Strebe from The Ohio State University asks, are you thinking about any kind of direct user surveying to gather complementary information? Yes. Yes, this is something that we've been thinking about. We're also thinking about right-sizing that kind of investigation to the moment when we know that our librarians, our faculty, our students are all stretched for bandwidth at the moment. So thinking about deploying something that would be really tightly scoped and very manageable and successful. So yeah, absolutely. Of course, as a lot of you do, I'm sure, who have launched ETAS or who are just working with HathiTrust in general, we have a fair amount of really positive quotes and anecdotal evidence from folks about completing their dissertations using ETAS, about being able to check citations using ETAS, and some qualitative descriptions of just how impactful the service has been. But certainly we also know that there are, as Chris Prom noted yesterday, some more uncomfortable impressions of how the service is or isn't working, or how access is or isn't working for them. And those are the kinds of things that we want to be able to really dig in on. There are also things that we want to learn about the suitability and applicability of materials from the digital library to different domains, for example, and different kinds of user groups, which we can't necessarily suss out from the raw data. Anything to add there, Renata or Chan?
I could go back to Dan, who's interested in finding the usage of digital versions of print materials owned by his campus. I could say for the visualization that I showed of our titles, it'd be really easy for us to filter that by UC volume so that we could narrow it down to the UC volumes that UC users are using. There is some difficulty with that because often there's more than one copy of the same volume offered by a different campus, and we don't know why they would choose a UC volume or not choose a UC volume. But.
So we have another comment in the chat from Michelle Polillo. Cornell recently did a comparison of ETAS use for this year, for last and this semester, and checkouts of physical material last year. We found the comparison informative. Let's see, it looks like there was some back and forth here about what they found. And Michelle's responded to say that the Cornell trend was that ETAS use this year was about 40 to 50% of last year's physical checkouts. Curves of use rise and fall were similar. It helps to know that ETAS overlap for Cornell is about 50% of our print holdings. Wow, that's a really amazing data point to have. Absolutely, and that's something that we've been thinking about as well. It's to a certain extent, somewhat apples to oranges because the motivation for checking out a print copy might be very different than the motivation for accessing a digital copy through HathiTrust. There are a lot of other kind of considerations to think about in that general context, but that's really fascinating and encouraging to hear those stats. There's another comment in here about it would be nice to have additional metadata for titles used, such as subject, to establish clusters. Yeah, doing that drill down is something that we're looking forward to doing, but we know, given past experience trying to do this kind of analysis, that that it can be challenging. And many thanks to Jeff Kosikoff, who yesterday from Duke gave a really great presentation doing that kind of drill down using LC call numbers to get a better handle on strengths and weaknesses in what was accessed based on domain. Or kind of content coverage of the content. Absolutely, that's going to involve, at least on our end, I know, kind of a skip and a hop using the OCLC number to jump out of the log data and make some connections with other data that we have.
Kathryn, I just want to jump in to read a follow-up comment from the chat. Chris Mayo at Boston College commented, we've actually done some subject analysis on ETAS usage by exporting bib records for ETAS titles and cross-referencing them with the box logs. Our overarching winner is the beat area of LC call numbers, which is unsurprising for a Jesuit school. And then Michelle from Cornell said that she's also trying to do something like this at Cornell. So there's a lot of discussion going on in chat. It's hard to stay on top of it.
I know, it's hard to keep up. This is so great. We're gonna have to go back and look through the logs. Fantastic. This is exactly what we were hoping would happen, is that we'd get some kind of cross-fertilization, comparing and sharing different ideas. Let's see, I hope I'm not skipping over anybody. But there's another comment that's come in from Miranda Bennett. I think that there's a lot of potential for compare-contrast studies across HathiTrust member libraries, looking at various measures of usage. For example, long time versus newer HathiTrust members, content contributors versus libraries that haven't yet contributed, etc. Definitely, definitely. Another comment from Jeff Kosikoff at Duke: a key takeaway was the value of digitized materials in support of the work of cataloging. The ability to compare editions was particularly cool in ETAS for our description folks. Yeah, and that's an area that I know has come up in other sessions, and is one that we've talked about anecdotally, but haven't really done a lot of drilling into. Is thinking about how much of the use that we're seeing is actually used by librarians to support library functions in this moment where we don't have physical access to this content. A question from Corey Craig here. Are data being collected on type of user, faculty, researcher, grad, undergrad? So let's put that out to this group to see if anybody has some experience with this. I know in particular, this is something that we're very interested in, but we're also challenged to do with the data at hand, and the specifically the ways in which the different UC campuses have been set up with their authentication. So in some cases, authentication involves that granular role identification, but in many cases it does not. And so again, we'd have to be jumping across and making connections across a couple different data sets. And that also may be fodder for more of a qualitative and or reaching out to individual users to better understand their experience, motivation to do that. Any other perspectives on thinking about the different kinds of users and how to get at that assessment? A couple plus ones for Corey's question there. Hopefully my response shed some light on it, but I think that there are other ways for us to be thinking about gathering that information. Chris Mayo notes that what I'm seeing in our top titles is that they're all referencing theology in particular. Cool. Again, I'll harken back to Jeff Kosikoff's presentation yesterday. It was really fascinating to see the relationship between your subject strengths in your collection and what folks were accessing in HathiTrust, and some of the really great questions and next steps that you posed there. Definitely a lot for us to take back and consider.
I have a comment related to the call number range B or other areas. We haven't done that. That's something that we wanted to do, is to map the usage with the subject, the call numbers. But what we have also seen, but we have been analyzing the licensed ebook usage by the subject categories. And I have to say, for those, it's very interesting to see actually the call number ranges B are highly used in the licensed resource ebooks as well. So I think there's something, I think maybe in that users in those disciplines, they rely more on the digital versions than they had in the past.
So I'm going to move us along to another discussion prompt and just see how this resonates with folks. So we shared a couple of the emerging data stories that we're seeing in the analysis we've been doing, and just wanted to put this out there. I think to a certain degree, some of this has been coming up in the chat already, but what stories can or does the usage data tell about ETAS, about HathiTrust, and how are you sharing these? Maybe let's focus more so on the second part of this question. How are you sharing? Because that's something that we've been working through, is finding the right tools, finding ways of presenting the data, which can be very complex and somewhat challenging to kind of unpack and interpret, but wanting to be able to share these with administrators, not just within the library, but knowing that they might be shared beyond the library with campus administration or other leaders on campus that are making decisions related to opening or closing library services, for example. So this is something that we're always iterating on and thinking about, is how we're sharing the stories that are coming out. So one of the approaches we've been taking is creating kind of a master core set of visualizations and dropping those into a Data Studio file that we're able to share out with our liaisons group across the system, and that kind of serves as the basis for further sharing and interpretation. It was nice this morning when I turned on my computer, the first emails I got this morning, in fact, were notifications from HathiTrust that our box files have been delivered for this week. And so that's something that we're updating as soon as we get that new data. Well, I'm recognizing that we don't have a whole lot of time left. And our last question is one that we've touched on already and came up in the chat with a bit of plus oneing, I think, and wanted to see this discussion as well as part of our session today, because it is, I think, a pretty big challenge thinking through the concept of a denominator. So how can we establish a denominator for understanding HathiTrust ETAS use? And by denominator, what we're thinking about is, what is that pool of potential use? What are those comparison points? So, the entirety of the UC community is one kind of denominator, whittling that down to the number of actual library users for a given time, say over the past year, over the past couple years, who's actually been checking materials out from the library of that much bigger pool of the broader UC community of faculty, students, and staff. Also thinking just about pre and post ETAS use, as Chan has discussed and Michelle shared in the comments, and thinking about, comparing HathiTrust use compared to print and other e-resources is something that hasn't come up as much, but is another area that we're interested in. But how are others grappling with this notion of denominator, given that there was no other ETAS for us to compare to? This is a very new service and a very welcome service, but we're under very unusual circumstances, to say the least, right now, and don't have a lot of obvious comparison points. So in the chat, I'm seeing some worry about the story that the data will tell is that users are going to be very unhappy when ETAS goes away. I think that's something that we're bracing for, certainly, although we also know that there are users that were happiest with the physical materials. And so taking some of that anecdotal evidence that we're hearing and comparing that against the kinds of use that we're seeing and drilling down deeper with some in-person data gathering is something we'll want to be doing. And yes, acknowledging that, others are experiencing the same thing. So Michelle notes that some folks at Cornell are also wanting to use the physical books. So there's tensions both ways. I think that's something we've heard in other community week sessions, that, it's going to be challenging to kind of satisfy everybody all the time now that we've gotten really used to working with digital materials in such an expanded way. Definitely something that came out in Chris Prom's presentation yesterday. Joanne DePasquale says, we see sustained usage of certain materials, same titles coming up in our item reports on different days and times, which makes me think there's a good course-based use here at a smaller liberal arts college, while most of our courses are remote and hybrid right now. And another question that Miranda guesses we should be thinking about is where the cost of HathiTrust membership fits into calculations of value. Yeah, and in terms of thinking about a denominator or a way of comparing use, does it make sense to be thinking about cost per use in the same way that we think about licensee resources? Renata, Chan, any thoughts on some of those perspectives that have been coming in?
Regarding to the users, the print and the e-tension, I think that's something that why we wanted to do more user studies to find out who are actually using. We have the user count, but really who are using the service right now, and who would rather to use the print. So I think that's something we wanted to. It's really hard to find it out from the current data, but I think we need to collect more data around that area.
Yeah. Well, I wish we had more time. There are a few comments here in the chat that I don't think we're going to be able to get to because we want to leave you with a couple of resources and do a few thanks. But really appreciate all of you participating. This is a bit experimental given that we have so many people attending, and the raise hand feature was something we thought we could employ, but ended up with a lot more in the chat, which is fantastic. So we'll be going through this and hoping to continue this conversation. I think this question of a denominator is one that would be really great to continue on via Slack or otherwise through continued communication. So feel free to reach out to any of us by email or on the Slack so that we can continue this community conversation. I have this a couple slides to end us on. Of course, as I mentioned, we have these positive comments that we've been hearing about the service, and they're really gratifying, but certainly there's a lot more that we want to be digging in on, kind of what's happening beneath these comments. What's the experience that folks are having in accessing content through ETAS, and how does it fit for the kinds of teaching and research and learning that they're doing. And then finally, we'll leave you with some of the resources that we've talked about today, many of which I'm hoping are familiar to you, but hopefully this is also going to help if you haven't figured out some tools to work with. This will point you in a couple of directions. And finally, just thank you very much to Renata and Chan for sharing the work that they've been doing, and to everybody for participating in this discussion. Let's keep it going.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
going
you.
to turn off the recording now.